Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lim. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister is scheduled to hold talks with Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kiev. This is the first ever visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine. India celebrates the first National Space Day to commemorate the moon landing last year on this day. The theme is touching lives while touching the moon. Pentagon says military-to-military relationship between New Delhi and the United States is strong. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is scheduled to meet the US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin. Kamala Harris accepts the Democratic Party nomination for the US presidential election and vows to fight for America's future. She says she misses her tough and courageous mother, Shyamala Gopalan, every day. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Kiev on a historic visit to Ukraine. The Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Indians and locals on reaching Ukraine. And after concluding his productive two-day visit to Poland, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has embarked on this historic visit to Ukraine. This is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine since its independence from the Soviet Union, which took place in 1991, and after establishing diplomatic ties with India in 1992. And these are visuals that we got in the recent past of the Prime Minister greeting Indian community members at the hotel in Kiev, and also on his arrival in Ukraine. The Prime Minister, as we remember, traveled by train from Poland, so that is at the station. That is his arrival shots on the left, coming out of the train, which was called Railway 1 as a result of the Prime Minister being on it. And there he is greeted by dignitaries of the Ukrainian government, along with the Indian ambassador. And apart from that, he is on the right. We can see him meeting with the Indian community members at the hotel. And that is always a moment that they cherish. And they look forward to it wherever Indians are across the world, to meet the Prime Minister when he travels to those countries. It's a matter of pride for each one of them, carrying the national flag, and in a sense, ambassadors not only of Indian culture but of Indianness in these countries, and representing India in their own way. So upon reaching the hotel in Kiev, the Prime Minister was given a grand welcome, as we say, by the Indian community in Ukraine. The Indian community accorded him a warm welcome. This is the first ever visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. After concluding his productive two-day visit to Poland, the Prime Minister of India has embarked on a historic visit to Ukraine. This is the first visit, as we've said, by an Indian Prime Minister to Ukraine since its independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, and after establishing diplomatic ties with India in 1992. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Ukraine at the invitation of the President Volodymyr Zelensky. And during his visit, the Prime Minister will be holding talks with the Ukrainian President on strengthening the bilateral relationship and cooperation and to share perspectives on peaceful resolution to the ongoing Ukraine conflict. In his pre-departure statement, Prime Minister Modi had showed confidence that the visit will serve as a natural continuation of extensive contacts with the two countries and help create the foundation for stronger and more vibrant relations in the years ahead. The Prime Minister travelled to Kiev from Poland on Rail Force 1 train. And DD India's Jessica Taneja now joins us with more on the story. She's following it closely from the newsroom. Jessica, put into context the symbolism behind Prime Minister's visit to Ukraine.
Well, it is a symbolic visit in more ways than one, Mark, because you would recall only a month ago the Prime Minister was in Russia, but Ukraine, of course, also remained a priority in a sense that the Prime Minister, even in earlier multilateral forums, has expressed his concerns over the fact that the current ongoing war in Ukraine and Russia certainly has changed and altered geopolitics for the worse, if one may say so, as it drags on. And as you and I speak, it still continues, where the Ukrainian occupation in the Kursk region and the Russian occupation in the eastern region of Ukraine. So the battle rages on, but a peaceful resolution is what is expected from this entire conflict in the coming years. But the Prime Minister's visit, of course, is an important and a strategic one. The trade between the two countries right now is roughly between $2 to $3 billion, and that could go up sizably in the next few years, depending on the kind of trade deals that are signed. Not to also forget the kind of help that Ukraine would need with its post-war construction efforts.
Yes.
In India, providing that much needed help as and when a resolution to this conflict is found.
Indeed. So you have touched upon some of the issues that are likely to be discussed. But if we look at some of the substantive issues, what do you think is going to feature in these discussions?
Well, of course, the ongoing, escalation from both the sides within the territories, as I pointed out earlier, the western side, where the Ukrainians claim to have taken over roughly around 1,600 square kilometers of Russian territory in Kursk, and of course the Russian occupation in the eastern side of Ukraine of the four territories that Russia will not back out from. So those particular points of contention still remain, and amidst all of this, the Prime Minister's visit, although will not completely focus on what and how a peaceful resolution can be found. And remember, India in the past has also reiterated the fact that solutions cannot be found on the battlefield, and perhaps this is not an era of war. But at the same time, if you look at the kind of technological help that the country would require, we're given to understand that India would particularly be looking at how to provide more humanitarian aid to Ukraine, which it has done in the past as well, if you'd recall, Mark, sending critical medical supplies as well. So that has been India's reiterated effort. But what more is expected from this is certainly where India can come in and stabilize the war theater in Europe currently, where a key economy could really help build some kind of order, where the entire continent perhaps is at peace, and the focus can be back on how to rejuvenate Asia and how to help countries in the global south who are still suffering from the after effects of the pandemic and continued inflation.
Right, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Jessica Taneja, for joining us from the newsroom with that update. India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, who is on a 4-day visit to the United States, is in Washington, D.C., and he had a lively interaction with the Indian community there. Now, interacting with the Indian diaspora, Rajnath Singh expressed joy to see how the Indian community continues to cherish and uphold their cultural values and maintain their connection to their roots. During the minister's visit to Washington, India and the US also signed the Security of Supplies Agreement document and also a memorandum of agreement regarding the assignment of liaison officers. The memorandum of agreement it's regarding the assignment of liaison officers. It was signed by Vivesh Negi, who is the Joint Secretary of International Cooperation in the Ministry of External Affairs, in India's Ministry of Defence and the Assistant Secretary of State for Defence of the Indo-Pacific and Security Affairs of the United States. So India is commemorating the first ever National Space Day. This is today, 23rd of August. It marks the historic achievement with the successful landing of India's ISRO's Vikram lander on Chandrayaan. It was from Chandrayaan 3 on the moon on August 23rd, 2023.
2, 1, 0.
August 23rd, 2023. A day that etched India's name in the annals of space history. On this momentous day, India became the fourth nation to successfully land on the moon and the first to explore its mysterious southern polar region. To honor this remarkable achievement, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi declared August 23rd as National Space Day. President Draupadi Murmu attended the celebrations of National Space Day in New Delhi with a focus theme, Touching Lives While Touching the Moon, India's Space Saga.
स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन ने मनुष्यों की क्षमताओं को बढ़ाया है, मानव की कल्पना को यथार्थ में बदला है, ब्रह्मांड के रहस्यों से पर्दा उठाया है। स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन रोमांचकारी होने के साथ साथ एक चुनौती भरा कार्य भी है। इसमें अनेक समस्याएं आती हैं। इन समस्याओं के समाधान के लिए किए जाने वाले अनुसंधान विज्ञान के विकास को गति देती है और मानव जीवन को बेहतर बनाती है।
President Murmu hailed the achievements of ISRO and initiatives launched by government for startups in the space sector. She also congratulated ISRO for its upcoming Gaganyaan mission.
इसरो भारत का अंतरिक्ष स्टेशन स्थापित करने की दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहा है। मैं गगनयान मिशन की भी उत्सुकता से प्रतीक्षा कर रही हूं, जिसमें भारतीय अंतरिक्ष टीम को अंतरिक्ष में ले जाया जाएगा। मुझे विश्वास है कि इन सभी मिशन के फलस्वरूप ऐसे परिणाम सामने आएंगे जिनसे देश सामाजिक, आर्थिक एवं वैज्ञानिक रूप से लाभान्वित होंगे।
The success of Chandrayaan 3 has propelled India onto the global stage as a key player in space exploration. Union Minister Jitendra Singh said that India's space sector has put India at the front in the private sector.
And the world never expected that we would be able to achieve this feat, because our journey in space was just about 55 years long. ISRO was born in the year 1969, the year which is remembered for the first human being having landed on the surface of the moon. Within 50 years, just about half a century, we became the first to have landed on the south pole of the moon before anybody else could do.
With fresh investments and growing collaborations with private partners, India's space sector has taken a quantum leap, paving the way for future discoveries and innovations. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India. Well, ISRO scientists shared their experiences of interacting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the Chandrayaan 2 and the Chandrayaan 3 missions. Dr. B.N. Ramakrishna highlighted Prime Minister's excitement while celebrating the mission's success.
Prime Minister waved the flag and continuously he clapped, and the entire control center was a big area of joy, I can say. Everyone was clapping and shouting. It was a very nice thing. He told that India has achieved this feat not only for India, to the entire human community. He said this achievement is not just for our nation, it is for the entire world.
And while sharing the joy of the accomplishment, Dr. Pavitra Shinde described how Prime Minister highlighted women's contributions in space and encouraged scientists to inspire the youth.
A moment of joy, it is some kind of a special joy, I can say, and that I could relate with the PM. He also experienced the same, and he told it's something which is very rare. And then he congratulated the entire scientific community, ISRO community, and then he applauded our efforts. He wants to highlight the contribution of the women in this particular field, the space field. His encouragement, especially for the younger generation, especially schools and colleges, he urged us, like especially the ISRO scientists, to inspire them, to guide them, share our experience.
And until 2003, India lacked a planetary science program. Just 21 years later, ISRO has successfully landed and deployed missions on the Moon and Mars. Tapas Bhattacharya interviewed Dr. Pavan Goenka, the chairman of InSpace, and discussed India's goal of achieving a $44 billion space economy by 2033.
It's National Space Day, and to talk about that, I have with me one of amazing gentlemen, the chairman of InSpace. He knows in and out of the space sector. To talk about that, sir, it's a pleasure to have you. Tell us more about, we are talking about making India self-reliant in space economy. How do you see India's, space sector growing in the days to come?
Well, today is a great day for space sector. And everybody is here in Bharat Mandapam, very excited, very enthused, a lot of pride in what has been achieved. But I think we have a lot more ahead of us. What we're going to see in the next few years is how private sector works along with ISRO as a co-traveler in the space journey and contributes to technology, contributes to applications to make day-to-day life better for our citizens, and contributes to economy. So we will move in all fronts, and we'll take the space economy from where we are today to 5x in 10 years' time.
5x, right now we are somewhere in the region of 8.5 billion. We expect it to cross 40 billion in what?
Billion is what we are targeting. It's not an easy task. A lot of work has to be done in many fronts, and that's what we are working on sort of with all the stakeholders to see how we can make it happen.
40 billion you're talking about?
44 billion.
44 billion by, what is the time frame?
2033.
2033, 44 billion. That's a space economy that, Dr. Pavan Goenka is talking about. And it won't be easy, but they are absolutely gung-ho about the fact that India can achieve that feat. With camera person Rahul Chopra, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
And DD India's Akshay Dongre is now joining us with more on Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's visit to Washington, D.C. He's following that closely. Akshay, tell us more about, this security and supply agreement which was signed between India and the United States.
Well, Mark, very good afternoon to you and to all of our viewers. The Indian Defence Minister right now is in the United States. He landed in the Washington, D.C. yesterday evening. And since then, it has been a jam-packed event, jam-packed program for the Defence Minister, be it an event with the Indian diaspora or the inking of this crucial SOSA agreement, that is security of supply arrangements. Now, it becomes extremely important in several aspects as far as the national defense of India is concerned. Now, let's hypothetically take a scenario where India is in a requirement of crucial supply equipment that it imports from the United States. US being one of the largest, in fact, perhaps the largest defense supplier for India as far as national defense requirements are concerned in the last few years. So we are looking at a partner that is reliable as far as supplying of crucial infrastructure, crucial requirements and commodities are concerned when it comes to the national defense. According to this agreement, which is though non-binding, but the US has signed it with 17 other nations. India was the 18th SOSA partner, and the other 17 partners have been close allies. For example, the United Kingdom, we have Finland, we have Canada, we have South Korea. All of those nations, including Japan as well, and other several countries who have already signed this agreement, which mandates the parties of this agreement to ensure that the supply of essential defense equipment is provided on priority basis. Now, the scenario that we were talking about, a possibility of a conflict, we require some essential supplies from the US. So they will have to provide, all of these equipments that are required by India that it has already agreed upon in the past on priority basis. basis. So, for example, the GE 414 engines we have been talking about, because of a lot of disruptions that are going across the world, conflicts, possibility of wars, tensions with nations. The US market has been focusing on fulfilling its defense requirements, or the defense requirements of its NATO allies, and that is why there has been a delay as far as the engine supply is concerned, which has hit Indian program. So it cannot happen in future. If we have a SOSA agreement, and now that we have signed it, there is higher hope that the requirement for India's crucial defense equipment will be done on priority basis, and India will do the same. India, while becoming one of the crucial global manufacturer for defense equipment, it is also expected to do the same if it is required by the United States of America.
Indeed, a vital agreement there for supplies.
Absolutely.
But tell us more, Akshay. What more can we expect from the talks between Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin later today?
Well, Mark, that's a very valid question. In fact, as far as the expectations from the US side and the expectations from the Indian sides are concerned, both of these countries are huge, global players when it comes to maintenance of peace, security, freedom of trade, and navigation. Both being, one being one of the largest democracy in the world, one being one of the oldest democracy in the world. Both have shared values when it comes to these kind of conflicts that are erupting across the world. So the expectation as far as defense minister's program is, one agreement we have already signed, that is the supply of security of supply arrangements, and other crucial memorandums that are expected to be signed can be around technology, can be around artificial intelligence, can be around robotics, can be around drones, weapon supplies. US has been trying to become even larger defense supplier to Indian armed forces, be it the Air Force in terms of fighter aircraft, to the Indian Army in terms of better, more technologically advanced equipments, including night goggles. You have armors, you have guns, you have ammunition, and when it comes to the Indian Navy, it has also been trying to supply its own submarines or other equipment that US has been pioneering. So be it in terms of security, that will be perhaps prioritized by both the parties, or economic agreements that can be signed, to facilitate travel of the Indian students to America to get higher education, or be it the expats that are living there. Also, there are certain contentious issues that are also likely to be taken up as far as this meeting is concerned when it comes to India's internal security and certain factors that have been using US as a safe haven. So all of this can be discussed by the two leaders, and it is important because it's not just the defense aspect when it comes to the national security. It's also the economic aspect. It's also about the sanctions. It's also about a lot of other things that are usually not seen by public eye. So all of that has to be is expected to be discussed when it comes to this upcoming meeting between Jake Sullivan and Rajnath Singh.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Akshay Dongre, who's following that story very closely, for joining us. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour, we have, we're going to bring you India commemorating its first ever National Space Day today, marking a historic achievement. We'll get you more on that story. And the Congo steps up surveillance and testing as Mpox cases have risen. We'll get the details.
Okay.
And around 600 cholera infections in war-torn Sudan since July.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now it's time to celebrate many firsts and milestones the country has achieved in various domains. India's tremendous space surge is marked by two remarkable missions, the Chandrayaan-3 and the Aditya L1. The successful launch of Chandrayaan-3 made India the first nation in the world to successfully land on the south pole of the moon, while mission Aditya L1, India's first space-based Indian mission to study the sun, is also making several strides, taking India forward. Now, India is on course, in fact, to mark its territory on the sun as well as on the moon. DD India's Sakal Bhatt gets us more.
4, 3, 2, 1. 14th July 2023. This date marks India's successful soft landing near the moon's south pole, establishing India as the first one to achieve this remarkable feat. The feat of landing a spacecraft in such proximity to the lunar south pole. Chandrayaan-3 is India's third lunar mission and second attempt at achieving soft landing on the moon's surface. On July 14, 2023 at 2:35 p.m., Chandrayaan took off from Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. The spacecraft seamlessly entered lunar orbit on 5th of August 2023. The historic moment unfolded when the lander made a successful touchdown near the lunar south pole on August 23, 2023. Chandrayaan-3 is a three-component mission consisting of propulsion module, lander module and rover module. Successful launch of Chandrayaan-3 resulted in major findings of the mission. Chandra's surface thermophysical experiment measured temperatures reaching 70 degrees centigrade. Chandrayaan-3 is significant for the Indian space program, undoubtedly. It makes India part of the elite group of nations, Russia, the US and China, with demonstrated lunar soft landing capability, showcasing its leadership in space technology, including positioning India as a global hub in the new space economy. The reusable launch vehicle technology aids in cost reduction for future launches as well. Within 2 months of achieving a spectacular feat of landing at closest proximity of moon, Indian space scientists took another giant leap. It was time to get as close to the sun. September 2nd, 2023 marked yet another major breakthrough accomplishment for ISRO with the launching of Aditya L1 from Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota. Aditya L1 is the first Indian mission to study the sun from space, designed to study the sun's dynamics. Aditya L1 spacecraft is equipped with 7 payloads that will observe the sun's photosphere chromosphere. The mission aims to provide valuable insights into the sun's behavior, which will help scientists better understand space weather and its impact on Earth. Aditya L1 spacecraft was inserted in its targeted halo orbit on January 6, 2024. And after a journey of 127 days, the spacecraft reached the L1 point approximately 15 lakh kilometers from Earth. On July 2nd, Aditya L1 spacecraft completed its first halo orbit around the sun, a complex maneuver that required precise navigation and control. Aditya L1 instruments will provide valuable data to help scientists understand sun behavior better. India's groundbreaking mission Chandrayaan-3 uncovering moon's long-guarded secret, and Aditya L1 helping discover sun's various dimensions, thus setting the tone for India's mega space movement. As India celebrates its 78th Independence Day, its space prowess continues to cruise ahead to rule skies and beyond. Sakal Bhatt's report for DD India.
Well, India's High Commissioner Pranay Verma in Bangladesh on Thursday made his introductory call on Professor Mohammad Yunus, the head of the Bangladesh interim government, and reiterated New Delhi's commitment to work with Dhaka. The interim government, headed by Mohammad Yunus under the control of the Bangladesh Army, has been grappling with the situation and trying to restore order after days of lawlessness and violence in the country after the resignation of the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on August 5. Bangladesh witnessed several incidents of violations and chaos, especially targeting minorities, including Hindus, after Sheikh Hasina was forced to resign and flee Bangladesh after student protests turned into a massive anti-government movement. As a new and deadlier strain of Mpox virus spreads internationally, Singapore has begun screening the incoming passengers enter their country at airports for Mpox symptoms. Temperature and visual screening will be carried out at the Changi and the Seletar airports from Friday onwards as a precautionary measure against Mpox after one case was confirmed of a potentially more serious variant, and this was reported in Sweden and Thailand. Now, the president of the Central African country, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, has also allowed a first disbursement of $10 million to fight the country's Mpox outbreak. In India, as Mpox virus have been detected in neighboring Pakistan, in fact, the health department has issued, in fact, taken some measures to ensure that it's ready to deal with the situation if any cases surface in India.
There is nothing to panic because so far India has not reported a case, and the assessment by the JMG group and which is conducted by NCDC is that the risk of large spread in India is unlikely as of now. We will take the thing forward on a case-to-case basis. If we start having cases, we have alerted our points of entry for certain individuals who might report these cases, and then they may be referred to designated hospitals. We've discussed with states also. We've asked them to establish designated institutions for isolation and management of such cases as and when required.
Well, health workers in the Democratic Republic of Congo have stepped up surveillance and testing of suspected Mpox cases as the number of people who are getting infected continues to rise in the Central African country. Authorities have recorded 18,000 cases of the viral disease and over 500 deaths since the beginning of this year. Chris Okumringa reports from Kinshasa.
The Mpox outbreak is raging in the Democratic Republic of Congo. More than 1,000 new infections have been recorded across the country over the past week. A new strain of the virus discovered in the country's east earlier this year has been blamed for the rapid spread. The DRC Health Ministry says it's stepping up public awareness campaigns as well as the prevention and treatment of patients. At least 13 African countries have recorded Mpox cases so far. Some of the cases have been linked to the contagious strain circulating in the DRC. That recently led the World Health Organization to declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. The US and Japan have promised to send vaccines to the DRC to help end the outbreak. The vaccines are expected next week. The UK government has also offered $3.1 million to tackle the disease. Mpox is an infectious disease caused by the monkeypox virus. The disease has been reported in conflict areas in eastern DRC, making it difficult for health workers to reach patients. Chris Okumringa in Kinshasa, reporting for DD India.
Well, after a 6-month closure, the first aid trucks prepared by the United Nations Food Programme crossed Adre border to deliver much-needed aid for war-ravaged West Darfur. The United Nations agency on Wednesday said that more than a dozen trucks delivered food assistance for about 13,000 people threatened with famine in Western Darfur's Kerenik region. The agency added that it had food ready to move for 500,000 people. Global monitors say that more than 6 million people face food insecurity across Darfur, which is mostly controlled by the Rapid Support Forces. The army-aligned government blocked aid deliveries in February through Adre crossing into territory controlled by the RSF, alleging that it was being used for weapons deliveries. Let's take a look at other stories making the news. An Indian passenger bus with at least 40 people on board plunged into the Martyagundi River in Tahahun district of Nepal. The bus was bearing Uttar Pradesh number plate indicating the presence of Indian nationals. However, the Uttar Pradesh Relief Commissioner is yet to establish contact and confirm if the people belong to the state. The Tripura Chief Minister Manik Saha visited flood-affected areas of the state capital Agartala on Thursday after seasonal monsoon rains lashed through large parts of the region. Teams from India's National Disaster Response Force were also deployed to Tripura to carry out relief and rescue operations. The Securities and Exchange Board of India has imposed a ban on businessman Anil Ambani including 3 officials, key officials of his company, and 23 companies associated from trading in the stock market for a period of 5 years, penalizing 25 crore rupees. SEBI's investigation revealed a pattern of financial misconduct orchestrated by Anil Ambani and his associates. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. The US envoy tells the United Nations that Gaza ceasefire deal is now in sight. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te visits a frontline island between Taiwan and China. A South Korean hotel fire kills 6, injures 11. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Ukraine has said that it used a US-made GBU-39 bomb to strike a Russian platoon command post in the Kursk region of Russia. Ukraine's Air Force has released video footage on Thursday. Kiev's allies, including the United States, are supplying weapons to Ukraine forces but have imposed restrictions on how and when they can be used inside Russia. Out of concern, such strikes could prompt retaliation from Russia that draws NATO countries into the Russia-Ukraine war. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the Director General Rafael Grossi, will visit Kursk's nuclear power plant next week to assess the situation. The IAEA was informed by the Russian Federation that the remains of a drone had been found within the Kursk nuclear power plant. The Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday accused Ukraine of trying to strike the Kursk nuclear power plant in an overnight attack. The acting Kursk governor, Alexei Smirnov, told Putin that the situation at the Kursk plant was stable. And here's Dasha Chernyshova with more from Moscow.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said Ukrainian forces tried to attack the Kursk nuclear power plant on Thursday. He said that Moscow had informed the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA about the incident. He said that he expected watchdog specialists to come and assess the situation. Acting Kursk governor Alexei Smirnov told Putin that the plant remains stable. IAEA head Rafael Grossi is expected to visit the plant next week. He earlier called for maximum restraint to avoid a nuclear accident at the Kursk nuclear power plant. Speaking at a meeting of senior officials about the situation in Russia and border regions, Smirnov told Putin that over 133,000 people had left the border regions. Bryansk region governor Alexander Bogomaz said that the border forces had repelled a Ukrainian attempt to cross into Russia. And in the Belgrade region, the governor said that over 30 settlements had been closed and residents relocated. On Thursday evening, Ukraine hit a ferry with fuel tanks in the port of Kavkaz in southern Krasnodar region of Russia. The ferry, loaded with 30 fuel tanks, sank. Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Well, let's get you an update now from the Russia-Ukraine, from the Israel-Hamas conflict. Now, the hostage and ceasefire talks are expected to pick up once again over the coming days in Cairo as mediators look to find ways to bridge the gaps between Israel and Hamas. After more than 10 months of fighting in Gaza, it comes as hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah are escalating amid a fear of a wider regional spillover. Here's Sarah Coates with more.
Well, the pressure on both Israel and Hamas to come to an agreement, come to a ceasefire deal just continues to mount, although while there is a lot of hope for this happening, there certainly is not a lot of optimism here on the ground. Now, late on Wednesday, US President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they had a phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, really pressing him on the urgency for a truce in Gaza. Now, shortly after this, his office put out a statement. It says that Israel will insist on the achievement of all its objectives of the war as they've been defined by the Security Cabinet, including that Gaza will never again constitute a security threat to Israel. Now, really, the major sticking point this time around is the control over the Philadelphia corridor. This is this very narrow strip of land that separates Egypt and Gaza. And it is a demand of Israel and the Prime Minister that there will be no withdrawal of Israeli forces from this strategic area, with Netanyahu saying that this would be a security threat given that weapon smuggling could happen from Egypt into Gaza. Now, Hamas has also demanded that Israeli forces must withdraw from that area. So certainly a lot of work to do for these key mediators over the weekend as they really try and get across the line and get this truce into play, with this truce really being seen as vital to bring down tensions in other parts of the region, including between Israel and Hezbollah, with cross-border strikes only intensifying. And we also do need to remember that this threat of retaliation from both Hezbollah and also Iran continues to loom over Israel after the assassination of two very senior figures, one of these being Fuad Shakur. He was the second in charge of Hezbollah. He was assassinated in Beirut a number of weeks ago, and just the day after that assassination was another. And this was of Ismail Haniyeh. He was the leader of Hamas's Politburo. So certainly a lot of tension in the region, and once again a lot of pressure on both of these warring parties to finally get this truce done after 10 months of fighting in not only Gaza, but also heavy conflict in Israel's north. Reporting from Tel Aviv, I'm Sarah Coates for DD India.
The 2024 Democratic National Convention got over with Kamala Harris formally accepting the Democratic Party's nomination for the 2024 presidency. Kamala Harris made her case to the country that she is the right person to be the next president of the United States. It was Harris's most important speech in her life, people say. Kamala Harris's path from prosecutor to politician has been defined by many firsts. She was the first American Indian woman, American Indian senator, in fact, and California's first female and South Asian Attorney General. Harris is also the first woman to become a vice president, as well as the first black and Asian American person to hold the office.
And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Well, Harris emerged as the Democratic Party candidate a little more than a month ago when allies of Joe Biden, who's the president, who's 81 years old, forced him to quit the race. Now, if successful, she stands to make history as the first woman elected U.S. president.
She said she would enshrine that into law if Congress allowed her to when she becomes president, in her words. She also spoke about border policy, how she said she would pass a bipartisan border policy. That's something that was considered by Congress, but ultimately voted down in the last few months. She said she would move to protect that. She said it's possible to be a country that both respects immigrants but also is able to fix what is wrong with the border system right now. And that's quite an important balance to strike to really appeal to voters. We know it's something that many Republicans have been complaining about, that they don't think the Biden-Harris administration has done enough to protect and secure the borders. She also spoke about using tax breaks to help the middle class, really uplifting, she said, more than 1 million Americans, protecting social security and also healthcare. So really a plethora of different things she spoke about, as well as gun violence and the need to do more on that. That's something that's really resonated across this convention.
Well, Kamala Harris called her opponent Donald Trump as a non-serious man. She talked of the chaos and calamity of his time in the White House, she alleged. Now, Harris launched a scathing attack on Trump for appointing a conservative justices to the Supreme Court, which later the Supreme Court later overturned Roe v. Wade, which had protected the federal right to abortion for decades.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse.
Well, on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Harris said that she will continue to stand strong with Ukraine and the American allies of NATO. And on the Israel-Gaza conflict, Harris said that she will always defend key U.S. ally Israel and called for an end to the conflict. Kamala Harris issued a direct appeal to Republicans questioning whether to vote for her, vowing to be a president for all Americans. Harris called voters to be guided by optimism as the election approaches.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power.
Well, the former U.S. President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, posted her live reactions to Vice President Harris's Democratic nomination acceptance speech on his Truth Social platform. Truth also posted a tweet on social media platform X. Trump said that Harris stands for incompetence and weakness, adding that the U.S. is being laughed at all over the world. In fact, Trump labeled Harris as a radical Marxist. On the border issue, he said that she could not close the border. He further quipped that she has 4.5 months left in office, predicting his win in the November elections. The Taiwan President Lai Ching-te visited the frontline island between Taiwan and China to mark a key battle with Chinese forces on Friday on his first trip to Kinmen since assuming office in May. Lai laid a wreath and bowed his head in respect at a memorial park for the 66th anniversary of a clash with Chinese forces. While addressing veterans at a lunch, Lai said that Taiwan wants to continue its free way of life and rejects being ruled by China's Communist Party.
Our aim is that we hope for a peaceful development across the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's a country that ardently loves peace. Taiwan's people are kind. We are no longer trying to retake the mainland, but we are also unwilling to be ruled by the Communist Party. We want to continue a life of democracy, freedom, human rights, and the rule of law.
South Korea's Safety Minister Lee Sang-min visited the scene of a hotel fire on Friday that killed 7 people and injured 12 others. The fire began on the 8th floor of a 9-story hotel in Bucheon on Thursday, and Lee vowed a thorough investigation and pledged to prevent such tragic incidents from occurring or reoccurring. All 3 major U.S. stock indices lost ground on Thursday, weighed by technology stocks as the Treasury yields rose on easing recession fears, as well as global central bank officials convening at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium. The S&P 500 lost 0.89%. The Nasdaq Composite lost 1.67%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.43%. Time for the sports news. And the star Indian javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra secured the 2nd spot as he registered a season-best throw of 89.49 meters at the Lausanne Diamond League 2024 on Thursday night. This was Chopra's first competitive appearance since he bagged the silver at the Paris Olympics in 2024. But the 26-year-old was edged out by Grenada's Anderson Peters, who claimed the top spot in Switzerland with a mammoth throw of 90.81 meters. Meanwhile, Julian Weber of Germany came in 3rd on a day with his best throw of 87.08 meters. So, the top 6 javelin throwers in the season standings qualify for the final in Belgium, slated to be held on the 14th of September. 4 Indian women wrestlers, stamped their class on Thursday as they bagged gold medals in the Under-17 World Wrestling Championships 2024. Aditi Kumari emerged champion in the 43 kg category, blanking Maria Louise Gikka of Greece 7-0 in the title clash. In the 57 kg final, Neha overpowered Japan's So Tutsu as she stood out with her double leg attacks. And in the 65 kg final, Pulkit faced Daria Frolova, who is competing as a neutral athlete, and won 6-3. Mansi Letar clinched the top podium spot after beating Hanna Priskaya in the 73 kg category. Meanwhile, India has also won 2 bronze medals in the Greco-Roman style, with Ronak Dahiya and Sainath Pardhi ending on the podiums. As India celebrates its first National Space Day, Prime Minister has extended his greetings to the citizens by sharing a video recalling the historic soft landing on the moon last year. Let's take a look.
India is on the moon. 23 अगस्त को जब भारत ने चंद्रमा पर तिरंगा फहराया, उस दिन को अब नेशनल स्पेस डे के रूप में मनाया जाएगा। मंगलयान की सफलता ने, चंद्रयान की सफलता ने, गगनयान की तैयारी ने देश की युवा पीढ़ी को एक नया मिजाज दे दिया है। भारत वो देश है जिसने हजारों वर्ष पूर्व ही धरती के बाहर अनंत अंतरिक्ष में देखना शुरू कर दिया था। हमारे यहाँ सदियों पहले अनुसंधान परंपरा के आर्यभट्ट, ब्रह्मगुप्त, वराहमिहिर और भास्कराचार्य जैसे ऋषि मनीषी हुए थे।
स्पेस साइंस सिर्फ रॉकेट साइंस नहीं है, बल्कि ये सबसे बड़ी सोशल साइंस भी है। स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजी से सोसाइटी को सबसे अधिक लाभ होता है। आज हमारी डेली लाइफ में जो भी टेक्नोलॉजी यूज होती है, उसमें स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजी का बहुत बड़ा रोल है। कि आने वाले 10 वर्षों में भारत की स्पेस इकोनॉमी 5 गुना बढ़कर $44 बिलियन तक पहुंच जाएगी। स्पेस के क्षेत्र में भारत एक बहुत बड़ा ग्लोबल कॉमर्शियल हब बनने जा रहा है। आने वाले कुछ वर्षों में हम चंद्रमा पर एक बार फिर जाएंगे। इसके बाद शुक्र भी इसरो के लक्ष्यों में से एक है। 2035 तक अंतरिक्ष में भारत का अपना स्पेस स्टेशन होगा। इसी अमृतकाल में भारत का एस्ट्रोनॉट भारत के अपने रॉकेट से चंद्रमा पर भी उतरकर दिखाएगा।
Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. That app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lin. From all of us here in Delhi, thank you for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.